Okay.
Welcome everyone tonight to What's New in Active Classroom. And I know I've been getting a lot of updates and new activities and things, so I'm excited about tonight. Um, our we are so blessed to have Dr. Aaron Willis tonight. He is amazing. He is the Chief Learning Officer for Social Studies School Services, and he has worked in the field of interactive and digital education for more than 2 decades. Vast knowledge. His primary areas of interest include brain-based imaging, hands-on learning, evidence-based reading, and writing strategies. Dr. Willis oversees the development of Active Classroom and Nystrom World with an eye toward implementing the latest pedagogic strategies in a manner that is intuitive and easy to use for both teachers and students. And that is true. I've been using some of the activities that he's created in Active Classroom recently. Based in Los Angeles, he frequently travels to work with teachers and train and focus on practical solutions to their professional challenges. So we are entirely blessed to have him tonight. And you'll be happy to know that this recording is going to be, this webinar is going to be recorded, and you'll get a link in a couple days. Feel free to share that with your friends. Also, we have a chat box. So if you look at the pop-up that came up at the very bottom, it says chat. If you click the plus sign, that'll open up, and that's how we'll communicate. I'll be monitoring the chat box for Aaron while he's presenting, and let him know if there's any questions or comments, and there'll be time at the end too for more questions and comments. I'm also going to put a link to our social studies services is offering the Active Classroom for free for the rest of the school year. So if you don't have it, you can use that link, and I'll put that in the chat box for you. So I will be happy to turn it over to Aaron and learn all about the new things in Active Classroom.
Melissa, thank you so much. Okay, so my goal is to try and keep this to about a half hour of giving you a quick, fast-paced tour and then leave some time for your questions. The focus will be really on two different things. One is new content that we've added in 2020. I'm going to talk to you about 4 new series, one called Mapping the News, another on current events, another History versus History, which focuses on historiography, and then finally a C3 inquiry series for world history. The US history came out last year, and we continue to add to the world history collection as well. Melissa, I see a note that somebody can't hear me. Can you hear me? Okay, yes, okay, some of you can. Okay, I'm going to keep going then. Among the new features that we want to talk about is integration of Active Classroom with Nystrom World. We've added some of the great features for being able to have access to hundreds of our Nystrom maps, all of our atlases and atlas activities, as well as hands-on mapping programs that can now be integrated with Active Classroom. This is a separate subscription or a module that can be plugged in. Some of you have had subscriptions to both Active Classroom and Stratalogica in the past, and what we've been able to do with Nystrom World is merge the content from Stratalogica into a format where it fits in natively with Active Classroom. So I'm going to be showing you what some of that looks like as well. Now, in order to get a little bit better idea about what brought you guys here today, I'd like everybody to open up in a separate tab a quick poll where you could go into pollev.com and go to SSSS training, and you should see a poll that looks something like this. What brings you here today? And Melissa went in and already voted for C, but if you guys go in and give me an idea about where we're coming from. Is this a lot of people that have just signed up and you're trying to find out more? Are you a little bit more experienced and really just want what's new? You go ahead and see how that works, and I'm going to give you a minute to get in and to submit your answers to that poll. Remember, just do it in another tab or window in your web browser. Okay, and the responses start coming in. I had to add D in there just to see if anybody would go for that. But you're revoting. Very good. Look at this. Almost perfect symmetry there. We'll give it another minute to round out the voting. Okay. Well, that gives me a better idea that we've got some people that are just getting started, and I can stay on at the end. Like I said, I'll be available for questions, so there might be some things that you have about making assignments or working with students that take us away from just the new content, but I'm willing to stick around and respond to those questions as necessary. I see also we've had people who've been, had subscriptions but not used it maybe as much as they would have liked, and then some regulars that are just looking to see what's new. So I'm really excited about that. With that said, I'm going to move away from this presentation now and go back over to the web. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you can see my screen here. Let me bring it up real quick. Yep, looks like what I'm expecting. Okay, so what's new? I want to talk to you about several new series, and of course, the best place to go for what's new is just by going here to the activities search area, and I'm going to go to advanced search. And I really find it most convenient to sort of organize my exploration of Active Classroom by going through series titles because each series offers something unique. Now, this is a brand new series that we just started. I hit M and it's going to take me to mapping the news. And then I hit the little search bar and I bring this as something we just started this spring. What I really like about this, let me take you in to show you. So this is the new series, Mapping the News. Let's take a look at, this is the newest one just out about a week or two ago, the coronavirus, how have countries responded? And we had an earlier Mapping the News that introduced the sort of the origins of the coronavirus. I'll click on the I here to go in. And the way we've set this activity up is it's going to provide students first with some background information. Oh, Michelle, thanks for letting us know that you tried this out with your students and that it worked out okay for you. Here, the students have instructions to read the summary and use the information to complete the activities below. So it gives them some background information. And then the two other components are going to be a mapping activity and summary questions. The mapping activity itself, this is something new that we've added to Active Classroom, and that is the ability for students to actually create maps and mark up maps. And for those of you that have had subscriptions in the past to something like Stratalogica, you're familiar with this type of functionality. This is our successor. But what Stratalogica didn't have that we do have now are step-by-step instructions for the students. So I'm looking at an answer key here now. And I just went to full screen to show you what this should look like. But essentially, the students go through step by step. It says use the text tool, write each country's name and the correct location and the date. And this was the date of the first confirmed case of coronavirus, and then place a disease stamp. They can go down here. You want to place a stamp. You bring out your tools, you grab a stamp. And so I'll place one out here in Iceland. I don't think about it. We heard anything there, but then now they're marking up the map. And they go through, there's just 7 slides here. It gives them some background information. And they're going to be placing other stamps here and other dates. And in fact, if we back up, we can see that we're not just marking up Europe, but that we've also got marks in the United States, as well as over in Asia, and we can zoom in and see that. So this is what the completed activity looks like once the students have finished. And you as a teacher, I went to full screen to actually view it. You can turn off the answers here, hide answers, and this gives you more of an idea of what it looks like for the students as they're working through the blank area. Now, one of the things I like about this is we also have this Atlas activity, and when we get to the end of it here, we can talk about that there's other I think it's actually on the next slide here. COVID-19 is not the only pandemic that countries are currently responding to. And so we had something interesting in our desk atlas on the AIDS epidemic in Africa. And so we're making a link to that from this lesson, and so that students can get a different context. And so now I can go to full screen on this AIDS epidemic, and I can zoom in to read this, and it gives them background information and then sort of a pro and con for best ways to treat this and to respond to that pandemic. So a great way to bring out current events for students. Then we go, once they've completed that mapping activity and they've saved it, there are some summary questions here, and this incorporates them taking the information from that intro and the mapping activity and synthesizing that and then being able to submit it. They also have a link out to a contemporary website that's updating it to the day in terms of where has the virus spread and how many people have been affected. So that is from our Mapping the News series, and we're going to continue to produce these. I think we've got a new one coming out in about a week that's going to focus on economic consequences of the coronavirus. Okay, another series that I wanted to show you is related in the sense that it focuses on current events. So I go to series title, hit C, and it takes me down here to current events. I run a search for that. Now this is a series that we produce a new current events activity every month. So they're always changing and they're always relating to things that are in the news. One of the ones that that I think is really important now, on April 1, despite the pandemic, we officially launched the US Census, and we feel that's something that's really important for students to understand about and understand why it's important. So this has a similar structure, basic background information for the students, and that's kept to about 300 words, so not too much, and then a few questions, and you can see we incorporate into these questions different levels, depth of knowledge, so DOK1 through DOK3 in terms of getting students to invoke a bit of rigor as they're going through and analyzing the questions. Then the students create a profile of where they live, and finally they've got a decision-making activity that they go through and then answer questions based on that. So we really like these. They keep students involved in events that are relevant, and you've got things here like Russia, friend or foe, tariffs, are they good for the economy, globalization, ecotourism, domestic terrorism, asylum. So we hope you'll take a look at those, and they each involve different elements. Okay, another series that I wanted to talk to you about today is called History versus History. I'm going to go in here to my series title, and this is I think these are available just in US history. Let me double check that. Yeah, it's basically US history focused, but let me just read the description of this. I think it'll tell us a lot about what it does. So I clicked on the title there, and it tells me, how have US history textbooks changed over time? Introduce students to the practice of historiography through activities that have them compare and analyze textbook excerpts from different eras or nations. An initial section describes historiography and its different schools of thought. The activities have brief introductions, one or more textbook excerpts, and questions that require students to support their answers using specific textual evidence. Okay, so this is really a great way. It's often in the social studies skills and your state standards that students need to understand how history is written and what gets included and what doesn't get included. And so being able to have students compare different secondary sources. I know we spend a lot of time talking about primary sources, but you can learn a lot by looking at secondary sources and seeing how they affects have different perspectives, and just like primary sources, there's a point of view that's included. And so here we have some different perspectives on the Vikings. And here's a section from 1844, a selection, and then one from 1881, and one from 1914, 1954, and then some analysis questions. So as things change through time, students will see how history changes. Okay, so that's a cool series called History versus History. Okay, the last brand new title that I wanted to share with you today is from our C3 Inquiry series. Let me see if that's here, C3 Inquiry. Now, a C3 coming from the College, Career, and Civics framework that's coming out of the National Council for Social Studies that emphasizes students learning based on an inquiry arc where they use then primary sources, they evaluate those sources, and then they communicate conclusions and draw, oh, I just did the wrong thing there. Let me go back to this. C3, I think I hit reset instead of search. So I didn't get what I was wanted. So these are available, and I wanted the ones for world history. I'll just take a shortcut and type in world here as a shortcut. And so here's something, did trade unite the ancient world, for example? And you can go in and take a look at this one. What's really nice about these C3 inquiry activities is they all begin with an essential question, some big question. Did trade unite the ancient world? And then students are going to be divided up into different groups, a history group, a civics group, an econ group, a geography group, and they're going to work through primary sources that focus on each of those different what we call disciplinary lenses. So if I go to day one for the history group, they've got a history related, a compelling question. And the compelling questions are going to be, so here for the history group, did the trade routes across Inter-Asia promote greater cultural understanding and harmony among different societies? But for the civics group, their compelling question is going to be something like this. Without strong organized states like China during the Han Dynasty, the Silk routes could never have arisen and worked well. Explain. And then they're going to be able to explain that based on the primary sources that they've got down below. So they're going to analyze those primary sources. Here we've got an adaptation of the primary source. So we're trying to create scaffolds to make it more accessible for students. And then the groups, each of the groups comes back together. There's 2 secondary sources and about anywhere from 8 to 10 primary sources. And then they come back together and they share their information from the different work that they've done in groups. And they get to this point where they're communicating results and taking action. So I'd encourage you to take a look at these. Another way to search for it, I think it's probably better than the way I did it, would be to reset it here to go in specifically to subject world history, and then go to the series title C3 Inquiry. And so you can see there's quite a few here from ancient China up through Rome. Why did Islam spread so rapidly? And we're continuing to add to this series. So there's more and more coming online. Okay, so those are the main new series titles that I wanted to make you aware of. The other thing that I want to focus on is our integration with Nystrom World. So now in Active Classroom, you can have natively 2 new sections. Now this is a separate price point. If your district already has a combination of Stratologic or Nystrom World along with Active Classroom, that's included. Otherwise, it may be an additional fee to get this in your subscription. But the maps then are available, and what this does is it loads all of our Nystrom maps, and you're able to do cool things like go in, I'll go to my secondary maps, I can look at a political relief view. I can turn on or off different layers if I wanted to see, say, political features or physical features. I can go in, I can get information about the legend, and then it also functions as an atlas. So I can turn on my information area here and say I wanted to know more about Brazil. I click on Brazil, it shows me the little flag, and then I go here to more info. and it brings up all sorts of information about Brazil that students could use for a report or for background information for whatever research they're doing. So that is a very cool feature where they can get additional information. Students can also create multi-slide, students or teachers can create multi-slide presentations here where you're able to yeah, Colonel Rudman, I knew you were going to ask that question. Do the Stratologica lessons transfer into this? And even though it's built on the same principles, we haven't found a way to transfer over those Stratologica lessons. And so let's talk about that separately offline, because I know you've created probably hundreds of lessons in Stratologica and you're deeply invested in that. But we'll try and find a solution for you. But yeah, I've been thinking of you as we've struggled with that. Other things I mentioned earlier, you've got the tools that you can turn on, and you can create a text label here, and I can say that I want this to be bold, and I want it to be red, and I want it to be this size, and I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to call this the South Atlantic. And so I'm able to label things. I can drop a pin into the Persian Gulf here, and I can add a video to that pin, maybe something that I find on YouTube or Vimeo, and then you can actually create lessons with that. So some of that same functionality that you all are familiar with from Stratologica. We can use the ruler and measure things like how far is it across the United States from here to here. And we see, oh yeah, about 2,600 miles or 4,200 kilometers as we measure that. Okay, there's also a way to create multi-slide presentations. You can zoom in, zoom out, and there's a range of different maps here. So I showed you a political relief map. You've also got 32 US history maps. So say we wanted to go in here, I like this one on the native tribes of North America, and we can load that in. And this is from our pull down map series, and we can zoom in here. And okay, so we've got the map. We can do a dual view so that we can get one map up in one screen and another in the other. So we can look at something that's similar and make comparisons for the students. So let me go back here to get my US history map. I'll get my native tribes over on this side. And then I'll go over to this one and bring up maybe a map of the contemporary United States. Or use this blank outline map maybe as to give students an activity to mark up and narrow in on different components. Okay, so that's some of the type of functionality that you can get with the mapping program. We've also added our Nystrom Atlases, and so you can have, this is a brand new copyright 2020, the Atlas of World History, and this will open up the Atlas as a, we can do this as a full screen sort of flip book that students are able to go through. And if I want to show you like pages 32, I can just jump to that. This is an interesting component that we added in. This is part of the new Atlas, and every unit ends with a historical issues today, so that students understand that we're not just studying the past for the sake of the past, but we're studying the past to understand the present. So here, this I think came at the end of the series on ancient Egypt, China, India, and Mexico, and we're looking at world's projected population growth and where that's coming from in terms of these countries. And so this is developing literacy skills where students are learning to read a pie chart, analyze images, look at maps and graphs as well. Okay, so those atlases are available. And then ultimately, if we go back to our activity section, there's something very similar, and that's this mapping history series. So let's see, I did mapping US history Here's let's look at the mapping US history because I just showed you something from mapping world history. Now these are pretty cool. So they all begin, each unit begins with a close reading and then goes to some mapping activities and then concludes with quick writes and a quiz. So there's multiple units in here, and these are based on the uh, Atlas of US history. But let's go in here, for example, what is this mapping activity on the Bering Land Bridge? So I can go in here and you're going to see that this is very similar to that mapping the news activity that we looked at earlier. It's going to launch this map, it's going to launch instructions, and it defaults by showing me, because I'm in teacher mode, it is going to show me the answers, but I can always toggle off the answers by clicking hide answers over here. So here the students go through in 6 slides. They've got step-by-step instructions on how to mark up this map, to effectively create their own map in order to understand the connections between geography and history and how things are related, and they're able to zoom in or out to get a bigger perspective. So we're really excited. These mapping history activities have been part of a hands-on mapping program that we've had available for 4 or 5 years, but now you're able to do this all digitally as well. So this was one of the limitations with the precursor to Nystrom World. Stratologica didn't have pre-made activities for teachers to use. And so now we've got hundreds of pre-made mapping activities, either on the world in general, world geography, world history, or US history that are focused. And that's a series that's called Mapping US History, Mapping World History, or Mapping Our World. Let me go back to that search here. So we were looking at Mapping US History. Okay, I said I wanted to keep it to 30 minutes or less, and it looks like I've covered the main areas there. Here's a way that you can add some questions. Let me go back and launch this PowerPoint again, and we can get some of your questions. And then Melissa, maybe you have a few that that people will want to bring up. I'm going to go forward on this slide here. And what would you like to know more about? So I just did a quick review of 4 new series and 3 new features and new content that's been added. But are there some other things that that you guys are stuck with and you'd like to know more about? Feel free, go back to that tab that you had for the poll EV, and this should be you should have a single field there where you can type in whatever you'd like. And then Melissa, you are monitoring the chat, so let me know if you see anything there that we should be addressing.
Yes, Erin. So what we have right now are 2 questions. One was Ginger. She was wondering in the maps how to do the dual view. And I showed her where the tool was to find dual view, but I thought maybe you could show that feature if we went back. And then also Deborah was wondering about as a new user, is there a training? And so I was just telling her about, and everyone about Active Classroom 101,
Great.
which is a self-guided course in Active Classroom for free. And you can probably get professional development credit for taking it also. But that's one way. There are other resources also. We have
Okay, and I can show them where that is or how to find it.
perfect.
So let me do each of those, and then we'll go back to see what other questions come up. Let me just
Great.
hide this here. Okay. So, okay, Active Classroom 101. If you're just getting started and you want to know more about what's going on, I'm clicking on the little help button here that's right near the log out. Don't click on log out, but you can click on help, and you can come in here and there is this area. So you've got a user's guide for teachers, also the user's guide for students. It's only about 13 pages. For teachers, it's about 40, but this is something that you can download either of these PDFs and you can help your students with that. We've got short video tutorials on a lot of the different things, like how do I create, a class and add my students? How do I find and search for activities and assignments? How do I turn them into assignment? How do I manage assignment or grade them? These are all short little video clips So that's a great resource. And then, Melissa, here's what you were talking about. These are self-paced courses, AC 101 and 102, which take you through the major functionality. Okay, I just saw a new question come in from Ginger. Can you repeat that one for me, Melissa? Maybe she's typing again. The other question that I saw earlier was, I don't have maps. How do I get that? You'd need to talk to the maps and the atlas. Well, the atlases should be there for just about everybody because we've included atlases for all the major subject areas. But getting access to the maps and to the mapping programs there's an additional cost to that, and we do have bundled pricing, but talk to your coordinator at the district or whoever's responsible for your license about getting access to the maps. And the people in customer service have been very generous about adding that. At least at this time of year, everything's been added for free, so you can get a better idea if you want to have that added.
Ginger did want to know, sorry, Erin,
Mm-hmm.
if schools have to do distance learning in the fall, how would you suggest they set that up with students from home? And I think Active Classroom is a perfect resource for distance learning, so go ahead and answer that one.
Sure. So there's a couple of different components for that. One is managing your students. We work with a lot of districts where they actually send us the information. It's called rostering. They're sending us the information for which students are connected to which teachers in which classes, and they'll automatically populate in here. So your classes will come in automatically. The students will all show up, and it's easy to make assignments to those students when you're in the platform. Now, the wonderful thing about Active Classroom for distance learning is that everything here can be done in an entirely paperless manner. You can search for activities like we were just doing. You can find that activity. Once you find an activity that you like, say we're here in one of these mapping activities, I can just click on the little assign activity icon here, and it'll take me to an interface where I can select, do I want this to go to my entire fifth grade period class, or do I just want it to go to an individual student? I can just pick Sally, or I can divide my students up into different groups, maybe at level or below level readers, and I can assign things out to them. I just scroll down, I save that assignment. And then once the students have been added to the platform and then assigned an assignment, all they need to do is log in. Let's take a look at a student view real quick. When the student logs in, they don't have quite as many options. They have the assignments and grades. In this case, this student has maps, and then they've got atlases or discussions. And for every activity that you create, there's also an automatic online discussion that's created. And so that's a great place to go to be able to have conversations with others. Let me just show you an online discussion that I was just participating in earlier today. So you can get an idea. This is for a group of teachers where we're learning how about our elementary program. And here's something. So Pam Gothard is the instructor here. She posted an initial query, and then you have other people in a threaded discussion responding back. So you can do this with your students, and they can have an online dialogue relating to the content. And if they're actually even in an activity, they can copy and paste content from, say they saw the main idea of a sentence and they wanted to talk about that, they can copy and paste that directly into the discussion forum. We've designed it to be really easy for students to do close and detailed reading. So I think between being able to find activities for them, assign them out, and then have students be able to have online discussions. Also, once you're ready to grade, you can go in, and if I go to assignments and grades here, we can look at what the grading interface looks like. So I can go in and I can grade this activity, and it's going to show me if any of my students have turned it in. Yeah, looks typical. None of my students turned it in, but I would be able to grade them here, and you've got the grade book. So all of that is available online and can be done remotely.
Erin, Charlotte was
Melissa, what's
one.
the next question? Sure.
Charlotte wondered, does it work with Google Classroom? I suggested that you could use links to link the two together, as far as adding a link to your
Sure, let me explain how that works. So let me go back here to making a, let's see, I'm in the right area. Let me just go to an activity. So say I'm assigning this activity. I'm the C3 activity here. I might set my due date. It's going to be due this Friday. I'm going to unlock it as of today. I'm not going to assign the whole thing. I'm just going to assign this to the history group. So you don't have to assign a whole lesson when you're making an assignment. And if I can't remember, what is the history group supposed to do on day one? I just put my mouse over that, click on it, and it'll actually pop up that section of the content. So it reminds me another way to view the content before I'm assigning it to the students. And then I'm going to go ahead and assign this to all of the students in my demo class. And I'm going to tell them to do this soon. And watch what happens when I save the assignment. It pops up this link here. Okay, now, Charlotte, this is what you would copy and paste into Google Classroom. And once you copy that into a Google Classroom activity, then they just click on it and they get to log in with Google, and they don't even need to sign into the thing. But they're able to go and directly into the assignment. So we do have a short video on logging in with Google, and I don't think that I'm going to have that posted here on the help page. I don't see that here now, but I know we do have that.
Great. Did
Right.
you get?
I see John asking they don't have to sign in again. If you guys have Google and Gmail addresses, basically they would go to an assignment. It would take them from Google Classroom. They'd end up at our, let me show what it looks like. So they'd end up in our, and they would get here. They don't have to put in their email or their password. They could just go down here to log in with Google. And since their browser is connected to Google, it's going to ask me, you know, which do I want to sign in with? So I'm going to find my Gmail account. And oh, well, now it's asking me to verify things that I don't want to deal with, but we'll talk about that another time. Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, so you answered, I lost audio for a second. Did you answer Charlotte's question about introductory videos for students?
No, and we don't really have any introductory videos for students, but the students do have access in their accounts on the help page. They do have the 14-page student guide, and let's look at it for a minute here. I can download this. If I click on these three little, the ellipse down here, I can download this as a PDF file and make it available to my students, but I can also zoom in here. And how do I find my assignments? How do I annotate an activity, save my answers? There's only these 12 topics here, so it's pretty straightforward for the students in terms of, you know, how do they find what they need to do? And then once they get into the guide, it's very, very visual. And the students are usually much more adept at this kind of stuff than the teachers. But we don't have videos for the students, just for the teachers.
Okay, did you have any more questions on your quiz
Let's
site?
go back to that. Really good idea. And let's see. Can we see this here? Any civics lessons that come to, any interesting or exciting civics lessons that come to mind you could share? Okay, good. So let's see. And then we've got, okay, go back over. Civics is pretty cool. We've got a new series that's, whoever asked that question, what grade level are you looking for in terms of civics activities? We have brand new government activators, and I really like these because they sort of put students in the driver's seat, and they ask them to think about what how they would respond. So I'm going to go to subject.
So that was 8th grade, by the way, Aaron.
Government and civics. Okay, great. So I've got something perfect, and I'm going to put in activators over here. And so I've got government and civics, I've got activators, and then so now we have both level 1 and level 2 activators, and you can see things here. These are going to be things where students actually sort of role play. So here's citizenship in a democracy. Level 1 should be right on target for middle school. And so here, what does it mean to be a citizenship? To be a citizen, what does it mean to be naturalized? Requirements, background information, and then developing a civic engagement project. So read through all the examples below. Then in your group, review the ones you've been assigned. Discuss this project in your small group following the discussion questions on the second page. Be prepared to present your findings to the class. So here's project examples. A community is suffering from economic recession. An 8th grade government class learned about senior citizens living nearby having difficulty taking care of their yards. The seniors were struggling with things like weeding garden beds. Now all the middle school students volunteer to help. 7th grade geography class. So the students get these real world scenarios that relate to issues of sort of active citizenship, and they're able to go through and discuss a scenario. And one of the things I think, even though we're in this sort of pandemic remote learning mode, I think a lot of these activities that were designed to be sort of simulations that were class-based, you can still divide students up into groups. Zoom has different groups. You can have groups A, B, and C. Students can still work together on projects in a remote setting, even if they're not physically adjacent to one another, and work on projects together. So these are, I think, really some of the coolest things that we have, the government activators for citizenship in a democracy. The one other thing that I'd like to share about citizenship is the We the People leveled text. And this is, we get a lot of teachers that are saying that their students really are not reading at grade level. And so what's really cool about the We the People text is that they're available at 4 different reading levels. So you can get the same concepts at a sort of an elementary level, low elementary, middle school. So level 0 is about 3rd, 4th grade. Level 1 is, you'll see in here is about, here's the level 1. We get to about 830 Lexile level. That's about 5th, 6th grade. Level 2 is middle school, and level 3 is high school. And so if you have students that are, say, in middle school, but are capable of handling the sort of the high school related text, let me just jump ahead to one of those. So here's what was the anti-federalist position in the debate about ratification. If you have students that are capable of that even in middle school, you've got that to push them ahead. And if you have students that aren't reading at grade level, you also have the level 0 and the level 1 activities. So that's the We the People level text, and that's a really nice civics angle because it does give you a lot of flexibility in terms of students being able to understand at different levels. Anything else, Melissa?
How do you assign the different reading levels to the groups?
Sure. Okay, that's a great question. So what I would basically do is, so say I'm in middle school, but I do have students that are advanced and that can handle this sort of high school level content. Okay, so I go in here and when I'm making the assignment, I might go to a group and I want to assign this to my literary luminaries. Those are my sort of more advanced students. And I'll give them certain instructions to read this. And once again, I don't have to assign everything. I can just assign certain components. Hang on just a second. Okay, so that's how, and that's a group that I created, and then I would go through, and if I had the level 0, like let me go back to that on the first page. So here I wanted to assign this as level 01, what is a democracy? And I go in here, and then I would assign this to a different group. So basically, or it could be a single student, just Sally is reading at that level. So I just assign this one and I give her the instructions. So the ability to use Active Classroom to differentiate instruction really allows you to meet students at the levels that they're going to be successful at. Now, how do you create those groups? That's going to be over here under Manage Students. And you've got classes, groups, and students. And so here, if I wanted to create a new student group, first I can look at who's in my at-level group. Oh, I've got Samuel Beckett and Johnny Appleseed. Okay, cool. If I wanted to edit that, I could add another student to that group, add an existing student. So the students need to be created first, but then they can be added back in. Okay, so students do need to be in a class first, and then you can put them into groups. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question of differentiation for the different reading levels.
Thanks, and that's all I have on here so far. Feel free to ask any questions or anything that you missed. I know we got Charlotte back on with her audio.
Okay,
That's good.
great. Do we need to repeat the whole thing for you, Charlotte? Hopefully not, but you will get a copy of the recording if you need to catch up, and it might make more sense with the audio. So we're hoping for the best there.
Absolutely. Did you have any other questions on your side? I'm not sure if people are still using.
I'm just flipping through the chat here to see if I missed anything.
And Joshua says thank you. That was exactly what he wanted to know as far as the
Good.
level. So good.
Good, yeah. I think, one of the biggest takeaways is that there's really a lot of information on our help pages. And, I know I'm not the first one to read the guide on how to set up my VCR or program electronics, but with these short videos, it really makes it easy if you've got any questions or using the very visual teacher's guides to be able to work through those, taking advantage of these self-paced courses to sort of give yourself some activities and some exercises. And then of course, there's information here on how to link in to some of the other learning management platforms out there.
So we've got some questions that popped up. So Ginger was
Okay.
first. How do you use the usage reports?
Oh, okay. So that's really pretty cool. Let me go here. And the usage report, the thing that's really valuable as a teacher is you can see which students logged in, when, and where they went. Now, if I put this in, I can search for a single student. But if I just want a date range, like I want to know, okay, it's who's logged in since the beginning of May. And well, I better go back a little further since this is my demo account and I don't know who's really in here. And wait, I got that backwards from. So I'm going to see from April 1 to April 30th. Okay, just in the month of April, who of my students logged in? How long were they in the platform for? Where did they go? And since this is a demo account, I'm not sure whether I'm going to have any data in here, but let's hope for the best. And we don't want to see the file is corrupt and can't be opened. That might be because there was no data there. Let me go back to an earlier time and try that. Okay, I'm going to go back to September 1 to, we'll call it January 1. Okay, lovely. So this is what the report looks like when it comes up. It'll tell me which student logged in, when their login time was, log out time, how long were they in the platform, and then as I go over here, I can see exactly where they went. So this is really, there's not too much you can do with it, but you certainly can know which students are using the platform, which students are logging in, are they going to the assignments that have they been assigned to them? If they do say for some reason that the dog ate their homework, you at least now have some way to verify that they were in and they were, looking at that activity and they spent at least an hour in the platform going to South Asia and East Asia Power Basics. So it does give you some background information in terms of what students are using it, when they're logged in, and of course if they say, oh yeah, I submitted that and you just didn't get it, you can also go in and make sure that they really have been in there. And then you can do fun things if you are you familiar with PowerPoint. Let's see, insert, and oh, it's not going to let me insert a pivot table now. I'm not sure why. Okay, so that's the usage reports. Any other questions, Melissa?
Any creative ideas for U.S. history 8th grade?
You know what I love for U.S. history? Thanks, John. It was great having you with us. One of my favorite series for 8th grade U.S. history is from Colonial Williamsburg. And I know when you hear Colonial Williamsburg, you think 5th grade, you think early history, but they've done such a good job at creating really compelling videos that cover a lot of cool concepts. So if I go in here, I'm going to go to Advanced Search. I'm going to go to Series Title. And I'm going to come here, down here to a Colonial Williamsburg electronic field trips. And so you've got ways to integrate math and science. You've got this balance of power and Bill of Rights, early history, but you also have things on the Civil War, probably appropriate for the middle school, on slavery. If you go back to Jamestown, you've got background information there. And let's just go in and look at one of these. Each one of these includes a different video. The videos are anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes, and then there's some assessment questions down below, and they're broken up into 3 acts, and there's some background information. What's really cool about this, though, is that they use live footage. They've got people who've reenacted things, so really would like to encourage you to go in and take a peek at those Colonial Williamsburg electronic field trips and see if there's some that meet your needs. Now let's see, I just saw something from Colonel Rudman. What did you say? Use Washington's papers to track events in the Revolutionary War. That sounds like a great idea. Is that an actual lesson in Active Classroom, Colonel Rudman, or is that just a great idea? Let us know.
And then while he's letting us know that part, I think it was Charlotte did want to know how to do a split screen for presentations using Active Classroom and Google Classroom. And I suggested just dragging each window to the side and using a 2-window, using one platform in each window. I'm not sure if that was said or talked about.
Yeah, so the dual view that I showed for the maps, that's something built into that sort of mapping element. We don't have that really for the browser, but Melissa, I agree with you 100%. You would create Google Classroom in one window and Active Classroom in the other, and then you could see both at the same time. Let me post here, since there have been some questions about Google Classroom. Let me go to YouTube, and I'm going to post the video that we have, the link to the video.
And while you're doing that, Colonel Redmond, he said no, he just uses his papers on his own to do the Revolutionary War. It's not an activity in Active Classroom currently, but be a good idea.
Okay, it's an awesome one. We'll get him. He's retiring in the next year or two. We'll get him to write some activities for us.
Right.
Don't plan to go anywhere, Colonel Redmond. We're gonna sign you up. Okay, so I found this. Look at this. It's 1 minute and 74 seconds long. And if I share it here, I can copy this, and with any luck, I can paste it in. And the link that I just pasted is how to using Active Classroom with Google Classroom, and it sort of walks you through making an assignment. Basically, the main idea is that still really you can use Google Classroom as an organizing place for the students to go, but then they go over to Active Class. You create the assignment in Active Classroom, they complete the assignment in Active Classroom, and you grade that assignment in Active Classroom. You can export the grades then, and you can bring stuff back into Google Classroom, but basically the students are still working principally in Active Classroom. So that's important, I think, conceptually.
Yes. Good. Right, that's all I've got so far here.
Okay. Well, I think that we're up at about 3:56 California time, so I think we've had a good session here. Um, I'm just going to remind you guys of my email address. Oh, wait, I've got that on my little PowerPoint here that I've got. So let's go through here and I can get to my last slide and launch that and say, you know, really, let's see if this goes forward. Okay. So Aaron at socialstudies.com. Follow me on Twitter at Dr. Aaron Willis. Feel free to follow up with any questions you might have. I hope this was a helpful introduction into sort of what's new with Active Classroom. If you're just really new to the platform, obviously we covered a lot really quickly, but take advantage of those videos on the help page, take advantage of the user guide on the help page. It really describes in very visual terms, you know, how to get things done in the platform. It's really, really ideal for this world that we're living in where, you know, you're doing blended learning. Maybe some is face-to-face, some is remote. And as we go forward, if you need to do more remote, you've got that ability to do that. Melissa, back to you.
Awesome. I apologize for my awful typing tonight. I messed up that website. I did want to let you know some of you may need professional development certificates for this. So help at socialstudies.com is the place to go to request that. And I'm typing it correctly this time, I think.
That looks good to
There
me.
we go. Awesome. Ginger says her department is meeting with Pam and Nicole in the morning. That is wonderful.
Awesome. Okay, well, Ginger, give us a good report so that we can stay employed.
And we do definitely want to thank everyone, and thank you, Dr. Willis, for being here with us tonight and showing us all the new things. I love that things are being updated daily. That was really neat about the pandemic. I didn't realize it was a daily update. That's awesome. But we are going to have when I close the session or when you get off, there's going to be a little survey. If you would just answer the questions, let us know how we're doing, and if there's any ways that we can improve in the future. But we absolutely appreciate everyone for sticking with us for this hour. Awesome information, and thank you again. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. We'll see you later. Good luck winding down your school year.
Yes.
Melissa, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, Aaron.